Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on Treasure Coast Solutions. Wednesday mornings from 9 to 10 o'clock. We're talking about things that affect you in your daily lives, some of the things that you may have to deal with, some of the things that may be happening nationally and internationally, some of the things that could be affecting you locally, and how that all works. So we're here to talk about those issues and discuss them, maybe air out a few things. It's not necessarily a political show. Because we're not trying to get into the, to the politics of the situation, but rather the finance of the situation. And sometimes, the finance is what it is, and the outcome is what you get. And so, no matter what, all in all, no matter how you believe about certain things, we all need to figure out a way to pay for it. So, and that usually involves some form of transfer payment, i.e. taxes, what we're going to do for taxes and taxes, financing, and all those kind of things. So today I wanted to get into a couple things. My name is Mark Breckbill. I'm a local CPA, an ex-banker, licensed community association manager for what it's worth, and also grew up or raised two kids here on the Treasure Coast in Martin County, actually, and gone to the school systems, been involved in the school systems, all of those kind of things. So we're here to, so I'm one of those people that maybe didn't grow up here, because a lot of people didn't, but I'm one of those people that loves it here and would never leave, even for more money. And so and I didn't. But anyway, 220-9788, 220-WSTU is the number in the studio. If you want to chime in or add to the discussion, please try not to get too political on it, and please keep the discussion civil. It's okay to not agree with me. There are a few people out there, a handful of people who don't know what they're doing, that disagree with me, but just a handful. But we promise not to invoke our Second Amendment right and scare you away. But anyway, so feel free to chime in if you've got something you want to point out. And we do have people. It's a good thing about living on the Treasure Coast, living here in Martin County, is we have people who have backgrounds in a lot of things that really have some expertise. And so it's kind of neat the way that works out. So if you've got some of that expertise and want to feel you want to chime in, certainly we'll welcome that and welcome your call. This morning, we've been talking about a couple things, and I know the past couple shows we've talked about some issues, and I try to stay away from a lot of really technical financial issues. Many of them may only apply sometimes to somebody from business, but it does apply to individuals sometimes, because it impacts whether they have a job or not. And so the whole discussion of finance from a global standpoint, from a local standpoint, is significant, because it does impact what we do locally. It does impact whether we have a job, whether we can afford to live here. For example, we've been talking about, let's say the rivers, and talking about the rivers. Well, many people know that our economy here in Martin County in particular is heavily skewed towards boat builders and real estate. So if our population, and in particular our boating population, dries up, it is going to have a significant impact on real estate values and on jobs locally. It's funny. It is that, and it's always been the way, at least I've only been here since '86, but as far back as I can remember here, the cream of the crop, and this isn't meant to be a slight to anybody, but the cream of the crop in the trades almost always work on boats. And the reason is because they can afford to pay them more. These big yachts. And we build some great yachts here. I mean, we've got people here like Whitaker, Katie Krogan. We've got boat builders here who are amazing. and sell all over the world. And it's amazing what we have. But and the craftsmen and craftswomen that work on these yachts are amazing talent. I mean, some of the stuff that you see from a woodworking standpoint is just unbelievable. Because they got to keep all that stuff tight and watertight and make sure that it doesn't, have a problem when it's and all of this stuff has to work really well, because you don't want to be, say 150 miles offshore and find out that something isn't working right, which always amazed me on the Katie Krogan yachts, because a lot of those, believe it or not, were single engine boats, and these guys are, out there in the middle of the ocean with only one engine. So thing better work well, because nobody's coming to look for you. That's for sure. So anyway, my point was that we have some of the best craftsmen and craftswomen in this area because of the boat building industry, and that also impacts the real estate industry. Because of that, we do have some high-end real estate here. They also get those kind of people. There was used to be a client of mine. I don't do any work with him right now, but a guy named Mark Jefferson, and many of you have heard of Joan and Peter Jefferson. Joan Jefferson was past mayor and very involved in Stewart. Well, their son Mark is one of the most incredible woodworking people that you will ever see. He has done things like the complete fireplace and mantle and woodworking at the Metals Golf Club. He has done projects out in the Bahamas where they fly in, and we're talking, $200,000 or $300,000 custom woodworking pieces for places. Just amazing work. And you look at somebody like that and the talent that he has, but so that type of thing, I hate to say it, but it comes because of the fact that we have some of these other things here. We have the high-end real estate, and we have the high-end boats and yachts and ships and those type of things that demand those kind of prices. And I mean, it's all over in a number of different areas. But and so when we start talking about the impact, for example, that the river has, it affects all of that. And if those jobs change, I have a rental property out in Palm City, and the young couple just recently got married. Congratulations. They just recently got married, and they've been renting my place for about a year. Just about a year, I think, maybe a little longer than that. And he came down here for a job. He's a nautical engineer. Came down here for a job with Pursuit Boats up in Fort Pierce. That situation didn't work out as well, and he went into the boat brokerage business and has been and he loves it. He loves it as a career, and he was working locally. Now, though, he's probably going to go down to Pompano, and he is down there now selling boats in Pompano. So he loves it here, but probably at some point his family will move, because his wife is in the interior design business for boats. And so most likely they'll head further south, because it's a long way to go to Pompano. So, and that's the kind of thing we look at. And you're talking about all kinds of jobs. This is an individual who has got a very good education, and he's got a good degree and everything, and so he can command a pretty good salary. And but he's going to have to head south to do it, most likely, or at least right now there's a heavier volume of business going down there than here. Same basic boats. It's just that some of that is already starting to trickle down that way. And if that happens permanently as a result of our river problems, there's no question that it'll have a significant impact on the economy and on finance. And so that whole process, and let's face it, these guys, these boat companies, these that are doing some of this building here, they pay some of the highest taxes in Martin County. They're on the water. Typically, they're paying significant significant real estate taxes. Generally, they get a little bit of a break because it's not, not probably is being zoned highest and best use of marina, but still they're paying, they're paying taxes, they're paying top dollar, they're creating jobs, they're paying top dollar for labor, and they're creating a large portion of the environment. And we lose track of that sometimes. We forget what Martin County is about. We sometimes get wrapped up thinking that Martin County may be about, high-end individuals who come here, and certainly that's important. But the economy here is something completely different, and but it's built around the river. It's built around the boating community. It's built around all of that takes place there. So, it's definitely an important thing. And so financially, when we look at the finance of the situation, regardless of how you politically feel about the river, and I don't know too many people that are opposed to cleaning it up, but there are, and I'm going to talk about how they do it. There's no question it affects the economy, and it has significant economic effect that as local people that we need to be concerned about. And it is a diversification. Let's face it. Frankly, the boating community at least is a different source of income than than the construction industry. And Martin County has always been construction dependent, and what that means is we go through booms and busts. We're in a boom right now, but many of the people in the trades know we'll be in a bust at some point, and they'll be laying people off. Hopefully not as bad as we were in 07 and 08 and 09 and 010 and 11 and 12 and 13, but we always do, because that's the business. It is cyclical. We're seasonal. The building industry tends to be cyclical because we're seasonal. There's generally just not as much construction a lot of times during season because there's too much stuff going on. So, not that it's not steady, but it's not the same. A lot of stuff goes on in the summer and it slows down. So we, it's all tied together. And it's interesting because we were talking the other day about the river situation. And the thing that I've found, and this is true in finance, people don't like financial problems because they're complicated, and they are very hard to get a grip on. And many times there are multifacets to the problem to get to the solution. There is a solution, but you may have to go through multiple paths to get there. It may not be a straight line. It may not be, I just got to do this. Now, some math, some finance is straight line. It's basic. It's 1 + 1 is 2. And, but in other times it's 1 + 1 is 3. And so those are the more difficult times when you need 1 + 1 to be 3. So it is a difficult process. And it makes it very hard to handle problems. And that's the problem with some of the more difficult things we're dealing with economically, i.e. the river. Is the river, we all want a solution. We all want to find the one answer. And it's great because that means people are trying to find an answer, which is a good thing. But people want simple solutions to complicated problems. And there aren't a lot of those. It's interesting, and we go back to various presidents and some of the things that made them successful. And when you take a look at, and again, whether you agree with the politics or not, you've got to look at the effect or the success. The success of many of the presidents that accomplished a great deal, whether we're talking, Franklin Roosevelt, whether we're talking Ronald Reagan, whether we're talking even Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, even JFK. the thing that made them very successful was to be able to take very complicated situations and articulate a direction or an answer that was easy for people to understand. Their ability to take a very complicated problem and not come up with a simple answer, but an answer that people could understand was what made them, I think, great presidents, because they actually were able to get things put into place that people didn't really want. When you start looking at the accomplishments of some of these presidents, when they started down the path towards these accomplishments, people didn't want that. They didn't want they didn't want to be on board for that. Do you think when Abraham Lincoln was elected president, people wanted to free slaves? No, they didn't want that. That wasn't what it was about. That wasn't what the process was. And it was a multifaceted problem in that day, and there was a lot of things going on, a lot of it related to trade and to the economy. But he was able to articulate the path that needed to be followed and to convince people how to get to that path and stay on it. I think when you look at Roosevelt, look at the things that are still in existence. I'm not a big fan of them, but look at the things that are still in existence from what he was able to accomplish. And did he have 100% support of all of that? No, but he got it done because he presented a path, which at the time was very radical. I mean, remember, in those days, we were talking about a pure free enterprise system that was laissez-faire was a big deal, and nobody was talking about a government supporting anybody in any manner as it related to jobs, as it related to food, as it related to any of that type of thing. And he was able to articulate an answer to a problem that, in those days, he didn't have 100% support for. So, it's amazing. All of the things, I guess, all of them that we're talking about, the thing that made, is, like I say, they were great communicators because they were able to take complicated issues and break it down into a simple solution, not a simple solution, but a simple path that people could find to a solution. And I think that some of the stuff that's going on now relative to the river, I give Senator Negron a lot of credit. I can tell you that was not where he intended to go with his Senate presidency, was the solution to, or trying to guide people to the solution to the river issues. And there are a number of complicated problems associated with that, but he was able to herd cats in Tallahassee. That's an amazing thing, to get that many people on board. We kind of forget that, we here and over in Fort Myers, we were all over this river situation and the effect that it was having. But the rest of the state wasn't really ready to spend billions of dollars on that. And Joe did a really good job of getting people to see why that affected everybody else and why that was a problem. And so, I give him a lot of credit for that. I'm not saying he's, Ronald Reagan or Roosevelt, but he might be, who knows? But he was able to articulate to a number of people who had no interest initially in spending that kind of money. And he did it with a legislature that has been as tight as you could possibly be. And he got a governor to sign on. And you can say all you want about election years and everything else. It's still, last year, getting some of that stuff done was a big deal. And so, it's those kind of things that we look at that we want immediate answers to. And, they're complicated problems. But one of the things I was going to, and I'm going to push on is that I heard somebody say one time, when it comes to problems, the best way to face them is to do what you can do. In other words, don't worry about what somebody else needs to do. Don't worry about what the federal government can do or what the state government can do. Don't worry about what Germany can do or France can do. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to be aware of that, but don't worry about trying to direct that. Fix your own backyard. Do what you can do, and figure out on the problem which portions of the problem you can address and solve. And then all you can do then is hope that the rest of the people who do have the ability to impact their solution will impact it. And when you have a diverse and widely complicated situation, like we do with river quality and water quality, it's important to do what we can do. And there are things we can do. If people are out there and saying, well, what are we going to push the water south and do all of this? Yeah, well, that may be part of the solution, but can you really affect that? I mean, are you going to go, you got to, first of all, throw a bunch of people out of office, and that's at Washington level and Tallahassee level. You have to gain control of the Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District. You have to get the project approved. You have to have all of them done, and then you have to build the dang thing. And we've gotten all the way to the point that we've gotten it funded, or at least proposed funded and ready, but it still has to be built, and that doesn't happen tomorrow. So let's not ignore that, and let's make sure those people continue to push on with the solutions that need to be addressed. But let's fix our own backyard. And I think that, I've been a proponent of that, right now. And this always irritates me. There is absolutely no reason why Martin County, at least, and probably St. Lucie and Indian River County, especially Indian River County, there is no reason why we can't fix a large portion of our problem here in Martin County relative to river pollution. Now, not blue-green algae, but water pollution. Right now, we can immediately bond and convert septic systems to sewer systems in Martin County, eliminate all of those septic systems that are on the river and are flowing into the river from wherever they're flowing from. And we can do that all for a couple $100 a person a year, $200. So if, I'm wanting the federal government to spend billions of dollars, but if we can just spend a couple $100 in additional sewer assessment on my tax bill, which if you got a mortgage, they're going to be putting that money aside at the rate of what, $20? It's going to cost you an extra $20 on your mortgage payment to be able to eliminate the septic systems within Martin County. Can't we do that? I mean, if you want to do something, why don't you talk to your county commissioner and say, I need you to do this. This is what we need to do right now. We can fix our problem. Let's do it. I will pay $20 a month more to have a clean river. If there's anybody out there that thinks that that's crazy, that doesn't want to pay $20 more to get some of the fecal matter out of our river, I think it might, I'd like to know. Don't live here then. To me, it's worth $20. I can spend it. And I'm gladly going to chip in. So, I'm telling my county commissioners, charge me $20 a month. I'll gladly help solve our portion of that problem, whatever we can do. And then I feel a lot better about yelling at everybody else that's not fixing their problem and fixing it fast enough, because we got ours done. And even that will take time. How long do you think it's going to take to replace 39,000 septic systems or whatever it is in Martin County? It's going to take a long time to do that. A few years, easy. But we will get it done, and we'll have fixed a large portion of our problem. It's interesting, and I talk about a multifaceted problem. There was a speaker recently that I heard who was connected with this issue and had statistics relative to runoff, and interestingly enough, of the water that is in the the canal right now that's running in from the lake here, St. Lucie River, and in that way. Um, Only 24% of that water is from Lake Okeechobee. So we're saying 76% of that is our local runoff. So the water that's being flushed through there, 76% is local runoff. 24% is from the lake. Now the 24% from the lake has got some crap in it. So we need to do something about it. But at the same time, we got the possibility of solving our own back door, our own backyard. There's 76% that we could do something about maybe. There are other people out there working on solutions. I think, we just need to continue to keep this out there and keep on top of it. But we also have to make sure that we're doing what we can do. Because it's easy to, I don't have much use for anybody who complains about a problem without bringing me a realistic solution. To me, that's a complainer. When I have somebody that comes to me with a problem and they bring me and they identify this problem, and then they give me a potential solution, even if that solution won't work, they give me a potential solution. To me, that's a person I want in my business, on my team. That's the kind of person I want, because they're not a complainer. They're a visionary. They're looking for something that could be an issue, and here's a solution to it. If you're looking for problems and you don't have any solution, you're a complainer. That isn't any good. We don't have any use for complainers. We need people who are visionaries and who can act. And that's what we need. Even if sometimes the action isn't always the first and best thing. Maybe we make mistakes, but at least it's people who are being proactive to try to help to make sure that the problem gets solved. And I don't have any use for complainers. They can go somewhere else, and they can complain somewhere else. I'm looking for, I think, we've got those in Martin County. We've got people in Martin County who are looking and have solutions. You may not always agree with them, but there are people out there with solutions. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. That is, it's kind of an interesting. So the other thing I would say is, you would think from looking at our local newspaper that the blue-green algae problem is isolated to Lake Okeechobee. Friends, that problem is bigger than we think. It is not Lake Okeechobee. Yes, there is blue-green algae in Lake Okeechobee. I always kind of wondered why we would want to flush that into the Everglades and kill the Everglades off, but that's another thing. That's only the lifeblood of the state of Florida. The Everglades are the last thing in the world we want to pollute, because that's what cleans our water and gives our system the way that would be a disaster. But anyway, but we got blue-green algae all over the United States right now. It's on the beaches in the west coast of the United States, not the west coast of Florida. It's on the beaches. There are places in Washington and Oregon where you can't drink the water. You have to filter the water because of the blue-green algae and the contaminants in it. It's up in Michigan. It's up in the northern states. I don't know why. You can say whatever you want to say. You can blame it on whatever you want to blame it on. But it's there, and we need to find a solution to it, regardless of why. We need to find solutions. Obviously, like with most things, I doubt very seriously it's a single answer. It's or if it is, it's going to be a single answer we don't have any control over. It's one of those kind of things where we do have to address this and take a look at it. It's kind of crazy, but I always thought, I'm like the rest of us. We tend to sometimes live in our own little world and deal with our own problems. We don't look up sometimes and realize. And I was watching something on TV or something the other day, and they're talking about this. They're talking about this blue-green algae and all the damage it's doing, and I'm thinking, God, this is making national news on, and it wasn't Florida. It wasn't Florida, and I'm thinking, man. But the other side of that is, and and I know, I know this is a tough thing for people because you get into this. How do you push people to recognize the need, but at the same time not scare people so that everything falls apart anyway? And what I'm getting at is that if in the process of solving this problem we scare everybody away so that no longer does anybody want a boat that's built in Martin County, no longer does anybody want to live in Martin County, well, I can tell you at that point, we probably don't have any opportunity to have solutions to the problems. We'll be all complainers because we won't have any money. If there aren't businesses and individuals paying taxes in this county, there is not going to be any money to solve the problems. If there are not a bunch of people out there that you can charge $20 a month to fix the sewer systems and replace the septic systems, then you can't do that. We can do that right now. We can do it because there's enough people here who can afford to pay that additional amount, and we can spread it and we can bond it because we have a great reputation and the ability to do that. If we don't have those people anymore, we don't have that industry anymore, we don't have that economy anymore, we don't have those housing prices anymore, we don't have the sales tax revenue anymore, you can't do any of that. You can't fix any of it at that point. So we have to be very careful that we don't scare the heck out of everybody who potentially is going to help us pay for all of this. If even to the point of, and I was amazed, that's why I mentioned Senator Negron, even to the point of when the numbers get so high as to how much it's going to cost or how devastating a problem is or how much damage it's going to do, people throw up their hands and say, I can't deal with it. I'm not doing it. I can't handle it. And so next thing you know, it's even a bigger problem. It's for example, let's say that we decide that the situation with the blue-green algae has something to do with global warming. If we're going to wait for somebody to solve the global warming problem here in Martin County, we're probably waiting a whole heck of a long time. And at the same time, if we're talking about the global warming problem and the effect that it's having on our river, and then at the same time, we're talking about, by the way, all of the coast is going to be flooded. So why would you want to buy a house down here when you're going to be, underwater, or you're going to be New Orleans? You start, from a PR standpoint, I'm not saying stick our head in the sand, but we have to be real careful about how bad we make it. Because if we make it really, 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 really bad, it will be really, really, really bad because there will be no solutions. There will just be complainers and they won't live here. So they won't be eager to pay for the solution. So at least, that's where I'm at from that's kind of political, but it's financial as well. It's, we have some people with great ideas and there are multiple things that are being done. It takes money to do that. And that means that we have to have locally a vibrant economy to be able to do that. If we lose that economy, we lose the ability to control some of our own destiny. We lose the ability to fix our own backyard. And that's significant because at that point, we have less of an argument and we have less of a voice. And if we're less of a factor from an income standpoint because we produce less tax dollars or whatever, do you think that, and because we have people who are less likely to have money to fund political campaigns, do you think that we're going to get the attention in Tallahassee? Do you think we're going to get the attention in Washington, D.C.? Probably not. They're probably not going to pay that kind of attention. So anyway, it's just, I know there's a lot of people probably disagree and I'm welcome to hear that, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. But I do think that I'm a strong believer in the fact that we've got great people here. And I think we've got people who are trying to think of ideas. They're trying to think out of the box. And that's where these ideas are going to come from. The solutions are going to come from outside the box, I think, a lot of times. But sometimes they're as simple as stepping up and doing what we can do. So, there's multiple problems, multiple solutions, probably multiple ones that will work. So the question is how fast and what can we do to fix our own problem? The other thing that I would say is, and I always say this because I'm an optimistic person, even though I deal in a world of pessimism a lot of times on the finance side and on the tax side. But I am an optimistic person, and never underestimate what we are capable of. The trouble with most of what we do now is we try to produce solutions that are only within our realm of thought. And if we expand our realm of thought, we can potentially expand our solutions. Sometimes the solution to the problem hasn't been developed yet, but it's close. And if we continue to provide the support, assistance, and attention so that somebody continues to work on that problem, on that solution, then we will get those solutions. And it may be something we never thought about. And I say this all the time, think about what we have now. And if 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you were sitting here trying to think about a solution to a problem, let's and take any problem you want. Let's take the problem that we're worried about somebody being stuck in an elevator, and what do we do about that? Well, 40 years ago, there weren't as many solutions. You could hardwire a phone in, maybe, but probably not. It would have been difficult. You have a button that somebody can push for as long as they want, and hopefully somebody will hear it. But who was the person 40 years ago that came up with the idea of putting a cell phone in, or a radio-controlled device or a self-controlled device that ties into the local hub and allows you to transmit? In fact, you could have lines for both. You can have multiple lines because you can go out via Wi-Fi. Who thought of that 40 years ago? Probably not a whole lot of people. So some of the solutions if you just think about even simple things like that, solutions to those problems didn't exist 40 years ago because it hadn't been developed. And, maybe I get a little bit like that because, right now, because we're talking about the anniversary of, the moon landing. And I think probably one of the greatest accomplishments that we have had, when you think about it, the ability to put a person on the moon, the technology that didn't exist back then, versus what, it's ironic, the risks that were taken to get somebody on the moon. I mean, you've seen the commercials, you've seen the stuff, and it was true. These astronauts were sitting around the table, and they're actually having discussions with their family about what happens when they don't come back. I mean, it wasn't like, I got my life insurance, it's no big deal. I do this every day. I'm out on the highway, so no big deal. I run the risk of getting killed every day. No. This was like, look, maybe we got a 60-40 chance. Maybe we got a 50-50 chance. I mean, think of those odds that they had at the time. The technology, the redundant systems didn't exist like they do today. The technology didn't exist like it does today. You can't fix things like you can today. And the risks that were taken, who would have ever thought that 50 or 75 years before that? Who, as a kid, stood out there and said, yeah, I'm going to build this rocket ship and I'm going to go to the moon? And then to make it happen. But the stuff that they made it happen with didn't exist 75 years ago. 75 years ago, you couldn't have put somebody on the moon. The interesting thing is, 50 years later, whatever it is, I don't remember how far back that was. It was 50th anniversary, Mike, do you know?
It was the 60s, so yeah, 50.
Yeah. So So anyway, what you're talking about now is SpaceX they've flown the same rocket boosters, I think 15 times now. So the technology is such now that they can land those boosters on a ship in the ocean and 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 do that and reuse those components. And in the art in those days, to go to the moon, it was a one shot deal, and if you missed, you missed. I remember when they were, I mean, I was a kid, but I remember when they were talking about that and trying to, now we have these high speed computers that can do all kinds of amazing things. You can probably do it on your phone, but I remember that if they missed the slingshot effect, which was the orbit of the Earth to try to get and I'm not a science guy, so take this for what it's worth. This is what I remember when I was 6 years old, but 7 years old. But I remember talking about the fact that the lunar landing or the lunar trip was going to be a slingshot effect with the orbit of the Earth, and it had to reach be at a certain time, a certain trajectory, or it would fly on by. I mean, you would miss the moon completely, and that was one of the risks, that these guys may ultimately live in space and then just die out there because they didn't have any way to survive. Because in those days there was not as you'd run out of stuff like air and things like that. So anyway, all of those things are amazing. And that's the other thing I would say when it comes to problems, is that I love about the U.S. is we don't give up. We don't give up the process. We don't give up looking for a solution. We have hope always, and I think that's the big thing here. And so in Martin County, I've heard people say to me, should you have your kids move? Should you, what are we doing? And I know some of our younger people have thought about this, but I have hope. Somebody out there has got the solution, not just the problem. I'm tired of hearing the problems. I'd like to hear the solutions. And there's going to be many, many, many of them. So don't focus on one solution, focus on these solutions. And let's hopefully work on the ones that we can do something about. Let's not ask somebody else to do something. Let's just fix our problems first. And then we can go demand that they do something. Because once we've done something with our problems, it's very hard for them to say, well, fix your own backyard. Our backyard's fixed. Now you clean it up. You're making our problem worse. So we fixed our problem. You fix yours. And that's where we need to be, I think. And we need to be at that point. And then at that point, we can find out what that solution is for those other things, and we can continue to work on them. And I think, frankly, a lot of them are in place. But I think we need to work. We need to focus on ours. And I've heard some people lately say to politicians primarily, do something. Well, you can do all you want talking about stuff, but we have to focus on what we can do. And sometimes we can only do a small part. But if we do our small part, and Sewell's Point does its small part, and Hobe Sound does its small part, and Indiantown does its small part, then ultimately we'll get the problem solved, because we'll handle our portion of it that we can solve. You look at the little town of Stuart, they've been doing septic to sewer conversion affordably, or relatively affordably. And I think we can do it more affordable than that if we bond. And they've been doing that fairly successfully. They have had a fertilizer, ban in place for some period of time, which has helped. Again, did that solve the problem? No, but it helped solve some of our problem, or helped to try to solve some of our problem. Now, when they dump that garbage on our shores down here at the base of the Roosevelt Bridge, not a whole lot we can do in Stuart about that. Can we do something in Martin County about it? I think we can. Can we maybe get somebody else on board with us? Can we get Okeechobee County involved? Can we get St. Lucie County involved? Can we get Indian River County involved? Can we focus on solving those problems? Can we get some dollars at that point? Maybe it doesn't have to be $20 a month per person. Maybe the government will chip in too. And so I only have to pay 18. But I don't care. I'm not waiting for them to chip in their 2. I'm chipping in my 20, and they can give me a refund. But we need to focus on the problem. So anyway, just kind of rambling this morning, but that's because I was anticipating doing some stuff on United Way this morning, and I didn't. So, so I figured I could not complain because I don't think I'm complaining, because I have a solution, and at least solution to one of the things, and it's not the solution to the whole thing. So, but I do want to not lose sight of the fact that Martin County is a great place to live because we have great people, and we have people who are not complainers. We have people who are visionaries, who do try to find the problem and a solution to it when they find the problem, and they try to find it in advance so that we can solve it before it becomes a problem. And there's a lot of people like that. Sometimes, there are people out there who just want to create problems, and they really don't want the solution because the solution is opposed to their political beliefs or or what they want. And so they're pretty much happy with a situation where there's no place for our young people to come back and work. There is no economy. There is no housing. Because I guess they're happy with the way it is. But, bottom line is that if it continues along the path it's going, they're not going to be able to pay for it. I don't care how rich they are. And so, at some point we got to deal with all of that. I do want to, mention that, we did lose one of the, Florida's great environmentalists, Nat Reed. No matter how you felt about him politically, he was dedicated to the environment. He was dedicated to making it a better place. He actually died doing what he likes to do. So it's kind of a tribute to the man that ultimately, he cared so much about the environment and how, and what happened. So want to at least go with, some recognition of that since we're talking about the environment. But anyway, we're going to be back next Wednesday, again, from 9 to 10 o'clock, talking about some of the things that may impact you. In fact, I think next week we've got Troy McDonald's going to come in, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the city issues. So tell your friends, join us 9 to 10 o'clock on WSTU on I think that's August 1st, and we'll have him in here to talk about some things and an opportunity for you to call in and ask some questions if you want. But anyway, thank you for joining us here. We are WSTU Digital 1450. We are your heritage station, and we want to be around here a long, long time.